All right, everybody, welcome to the What's Next podcast, where we sit down with entrepreneurs, real estate agents, and business professionals to talk about tech, real estate, and everything interesting, really. I'm your host, Max Bergstrom, and this is What's Next. Let's go!
We sit down with real estate agents and talk about how the industry is changing, thriving with technology. We look at strategy. We love it. Welcome to What's Next podcast.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the What's Next podcast. It's my pleasure to be here with Sean Zanganeh, a top real estate agent in San Diego. He's extremely passionate about client satisfaction, and let me tell you, he's not satisfied until his clients are happy. Sean, thanks for coming on the show. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here. This is an amazing studio. Congrats to getting this program off the ground.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate it. And you're looking sharp. How's the ambiance and the plants and everything? Does it fit the vibe?
It's like a modern day in between two ferns, kind of the upgraded version.
Gotcha. We were concerned when I always like to ask this because when we first got these, we were like, is one of them taller than the other? And you know, Tony's like a real perfectionist when it comes to the camera angles and everything. So we were trying to figure out if it was working, but I don't know. I think they're looking pretty good.
I'm a fan. It's good vibes.
Yeah. Well, how was the drive? You're up in North County, right?
Yeah, our office is based out of Del Mar.
Okay.
We have our team there, and that's kind of our hub for us, right in Del Mar, Carmel Valley area. So, you know, as real estate is these days, we kind of service a large portion of the county. You know, as we look around the major highways and major arteries of San Diego, we service a lot of those areas. So
Sure.
Not too bad of a commute getting here. So used to it. It's normal.
Yeah, it is what Forest Ranch, Del Sur, Rancho Bernardo, Poway, Carmel, kind of like up that 15.
We help a lot of people along the 56 corridor from Poway to Del Mar.
Got it.
Is where a lot of our business is. As a lot of basically my generation demographic, I'm moving a lot of them out of downtown and the more metro areas as they start their families, kind of move up into North County. So we're doing a lot more of our business in that Carlsbad, Encinitas, Cardiff, Solana Beach area. So we've kind of migrated further north over the last couple of years due to the change in demand of people. So a lot of the relationships I have just kind of everyone's kind of grown up a little bit. And
Totally.
We're all moving north.
Totally. Yeah. I when I first moved here in 2016, I moved to Oceanside.
Okay.
And I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Nice.
So it was like, I was like, wow, like this is like where people would go to vacation, and I like live here. And down here in San Diego, you know, it's a little bit more of the big city, you know, the night vibe and all that, but I totally agree. I've got a 4-year-old and I love the vibe up there. I'm in Escondido now.
Yep.
But Carlsbad is like my favorite place where I'm there every weekend. I take my kid there. We hang out there all the time.
It's awesome. Good beaches, good life. It's clean. It's nice. Can't go wrong.
Totally. So tell me about, you grew up in San Diego.
Born and raised in San Diego. I actually grew up in Poway area.
Okay.
So that's why a lot of our business might be there, because a lot of our relationships that we grew up with are still there. Moving a lot of the families I grew up with, moving their parents and that kind of stuff down into their, you know, next chapter home, as I would call it. I end up moving a lot of those folks, end up to the coast, maybe something a little smaller, a little more manageable. But yeah, it's a great area. Grew up, went to college here, went to USD here in San Diego as well.
Okay. Decided to stick around.
I'm a diehard. Yeah.
Got it. Now, did you grow up with Blink 182 and Unwritten Law?
I did go to Poway High School, so as if you know the Blink story and you know some of those other big bands, they did derive from there. I was a few years younger, but yeah, in the same camp.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, I'm a big music fan, so I you know, anybody that mentions Poway, I'm like, oh, okay, well, figure I'll ask, you know, can't hurt. Okay.
For sure.
So how did you get into real estate? Were you did you know what you wanted to do right away, or you know, you went to, what did you major in school?
Well, I finished college in 2008, and as you probably saw, the financial markets, real estate markets weren't doing too great, and that was the start of a very interesting time. So I finished up college. I'd actually done a little teaching. I'd worked a little bit in the loan business, as my father's in the business as well. And I kind of got to this place of like, I got to figure out my path. I'd been hired at a couple different places right out of college that were more of like commercial lending or commercial real estate.
Okay.
By the time I had started those jobs, they either rescinded them, got on hiring freezes, just because that whole market was crumbling to shambles. So, a lot of that kind of changed the course for me, and I kept going on interviews, and then everyone would be like, thanks for coming. We're not even going to hire anybody. So it doesn't matter why you're here.
Totally.
So I'd grown up in the loan business. My dad's in the business. So I kind of migrated into, I said, hey, I think I'm going to do residential real estate. My dad sat me down real serious and he's like, I think you're an idiot. Don't do that.
Really?
It was a tough fight the first couple of years.
Yeah. How old were you at this point?
I was like 24, 23 when I decided to do this.
What did he want you to do?
Just anything else, like
okay.
literally anything. Because, I grew up in that household, it's long nights talking to people about their situations, trying to make sure that they feel comfortable. We're in the comfort business. We're in the making people feel comfortable with what they're doing. It's a high trust business. So with that being said, it involves you having to really emotionally walk people through situations they don't do more than once every 5-10 years.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you put that.
Yeah, so knowing that, and I kind of grew up in that, I kind of realized it. I was like, well, it's kind of like everybody else who kind of got into real estate. It's not like they woke up and said, I want to be a realtor.
Yeah.
We kind of just digressed from something else we were doing. Yep. And you either have like the drive, passion, energy, all that kind of stuff to do it, or you don't. I think for me, I'd gotten into the business. I'd spent the first year kind of in the old school mindset of a brokerage where, some older, nice person sits you down and tells you how you're going to hand lick and, mail out postcards to people. Right. And that, by doing enough of these and, by knocking on some doors, we're going to get some deals. Yep. It's like, cool. Yep. I went and knocked on the doors and they were like, there's a 23-year-old kid looking to sell my house and I'm not trusting this kid.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot the first year or two of I basically did every mistake you could possibly do in real estate. Mm-hmm. And I did that early, which was great. So probably by the, end of the second year, I had gone to one of these, hey, come to a coaching thing. I sat down with somebody. I was like, well, that sounds like a better idea than what I'm doing. Got into coaching, started getting better, started making relationships with people who kind of did it better than I was doing it. Totally. Because I was in the office. Got a coach. Yeah, I ended up getting my own coach. And then also, everybody in the office I was in was my parents' age. And, they were freaking out because the whole world was melting down from the previous 5-10 years of them making more money than they had ever seen. Mm-hmm. So they didn't know how to course correct and react. And I was trying to use things like technology that they were still using fax machines and figuring it out, going like, this is just weird how they do this. So environment has a lot to do with it. I went into an environment where I grew up where predominantly a lot of those folks have been around a long time. It's an older generation. Yep. I wasn't joining an office predominantly in a younger territory. So I kind of learned it the hard way. Mm-hmm. But I think that's taught me a lot of things too, on how to be creative, how to figure it out on your own. I constantly ask for help to get better at things, but at the end of the day, I'm responsible to go figure out how to do it myself. Totally. And I think that is kind of a lost art we're finding these days. A lot of people I run into and talk to wanting to get into the business, where I'll tell them flat out, like, I don't know that you want to do this. This might not be fun for you. Yeah.
Well, it's very popular. And, there's been just an explosion of, entrepreneurs and investors and even agents, but this whole idea that everybody can be a quadrillionaire by getting into real estate, and yes, you can, but there definitely is that it's like the it's cool to be.
How do you watch an episode of Selling Sunset and not go, I could totally do that?
Exactly.
They said some dumb things on there and the people said, yes, I could totally do that. So we've kind of celebritized real estate a lot. I mean, there are influencers now in real estate. Mm-hmm. They're still holding the open house, but that's a thing now, right? That wasn't a thing 5-10 years ago. Exactly. So the market's changed, the dynamic of people have changed, and obviously when the market's riding high and they see real estate agents making money, everybody wants to jump in, and that's kind of the telltale sign when things are changing. So, totally. So it's these days I'm thinking about how we can save more and not spend it all. So
so a couple of things that you said really kind of hit me. I just want you to elaborate a little bit if you can. First of all, the value of making mistakes early. Mm-hmm. And, learning things kind of the hard way or the old fashioned way. What are some of because, you were able to, you're door knocking, you're doing all the uncomfortable stuff right off the bat. How do you feel like that really pushed you forward and made you more capable of handling what you had to deal with as you got a little bit further down your career?
Good question. So I find a lot of people get into this business thinking it's an easy button, right? Well, I have friends, they like me. I'm sure someone's going to do that.
Yeah.
So I got my real estate license, and I think 4 months later, my aunt sold her house in La Jolla without me. And I was like, well, this sucks. So I was like, clearly I got to figure something out.
You're like, yeah, did I not send you a thank you for the socks you sent me that Christmas or what? Like,
well, and what people don't realize today is like, those relationships, although are, until you have credibility, there's not really a lot there.
Exactly.
And people want to know you've done it. And what I always teach and train a lot of our own people is that use our reputation as conversation to help you win, not as something that you put on a pedestal. Like, you were a part of it. You were a part of the group that did that. And people love talking about things that have happened and that are happening right now. Because everybody has these pipe dreams, but when they know you just helped them sell a house in that neighborhood, the trust factor comes up a lot. And it took me a while to learn that. I didn't get that. I thought, I grew up around here. I got lots of friends. I'm sure I'll sell some houses. And then all of a sudden everyone around me was doing something without me.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I'm definitely doing this wrong. So it caused me to push a little harder, to get in people's face and really have a conversation with them that was meaningful. And I think that today is like the difference of people who really trust the people they're doing business with, and the people who can have like duplicatable business versus the people who turn and burn and are in it for talking to the client as little as humanly possible, just to collect the check and move on.
Or the part-time agents who are like, I got this other job, but I want to get a little something on the side, and don't realize like, that just isn't how it works.
Well, the nice thing about the last year and a half is those people can't really, they've had a really hard time surviving. So they've just kind of gone and done another thing. But yeah, I mean, starting in the business, just kind of understanding like, hey, you really got to work. And then watching, I had a few people around me who were doing really well, who I saw them do it by the hard way. And I was like, there's nothing fancy about that. I'm pretty sure I could do that too. But I think when you get all those nerves out of you early, you're able to jump a little higher, dig a little deeper, go do the things you want to do.
Totally.
And most people today they want the easy button. And that's kind of the difference. So it's like, it's very interesting where people start today you need to see all aspects of how this business works, and not just this business, but any business you go do. You want to go start a tech company. I'm like, those kids are spending 80, 100 hours in the office every week, and you can't get a real estate agent to come in for 40 hours a week. That's the difference of those people and why they make money and do amazing things and create those unicorn companies is that it's a time thing, right?
Totally.
I was reading an article, actually, I want to say it was Goldman Sachs, how they try and condense. The reason they work their people so hard in the first couple of years is it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. They're just trying to shorten that time limit from 5 years to maybe 2.5 or 3. And that's the difference of those people who I've seen really take off in their respective businesses and blow up and do amazing things, is that they just condense the time.
Totally. Well, yeah. And also like there's this misperception now when somebody gets to a certain status level, and then they've got content and they're out there and they're talking about, it's like the whole replicable, I built my business in 90 days and now you can too. And it's like, all that stuff, it's clickbait, it's very marketable. But I mean, honestly, like a lot of these people, these men and women have been working their asses off for 5, 10, 15 years before they get to that level. But I love how you put that, is that everybody wants the shortcut. Everybody wants it to be like the easy button. And, I understand that because, I think the human ego, if our egos had the way, we would just be, eating ice cream and watching TV and hanging out and having a good time. I completely understand it, but I'm always fascinated by real estate agents, especially like you, because we were talking about this, is that, this is not like, nobody's going to hold your hand and be like, oh yeah, okay, Sean, I'm going to make some of these calls for you and I'm going to help you out with this. And, if you don't get a check, I'm going to make sure that we sort that out. No, it's like you got to, from an early age, you had to get up and go do this yourself. You got to build it yourself.
Yeah. There was no boss. There was no one, no leader. The manager of a real estate office doesn't care whether you show up or not.
Totally.
They don't care. They don't fire you.
Yeah.
I mean, you really got to do something really stupid to get fired from a real estate office. So, like really stupid. So, so that being said, like you're kind of in this environment where it's the least structured place you could possibly go. And then you look at businesses that are really successful and they have an immense amount of structure.
Yep.
So, I think that's always the missing link of people, people think long lunches. I'm out doing social things, and that's how you build a great business. And you can I know a lot of people that do really well doing that. But those are also the people that when the market turns, they're left, over leveraged and in an uncomfortable position because they don't really know how they got there. They just got there. And I think that's always something that's interesting. You see from people that when times are good, we all do well. When times are bad, the people who spent 10 years becoming an overnight success are the ones who stick around.
Totally. Yeah, and I mean, it's easy to be in a good mood and be happy when things are going well.
Oh yeah.
But like, it's your true character comes out when things aren't going well.
For sure.
How do you pivot? How do you, and that's part of this show is all, it's about how technology is coming and changing real estate and business and how relationships are done with social media and all of this stuff. But also just, about that. And a lot of the agents we've had on here have talked about tech and real estate and how, the role of the agent, because it is an emotional thing.
Sure.
Because it is a human connection. I mean, it might change, but it's never really going to go away. And, I definitely want to talk about that, but I want to ask you, you just mentioned something huge, which is, there's real structure to it. So let's talk about like your business. How do you structure it? Are there things that certain practices you have that keep you, keep you at 100? What does that look like?
Yeah, good question. So, I've always I learned a few years into the business that I'm just not really smart. So what I do is I checklist my way through things, right?
Sure.
So like we're all simple. We all can follow directions. I got here, I put the directions in my, my phone. I followed a left and a right and I got here.
Yep.
I got there.
Yep.
And with business or any business really, like they're all simple. We just overcomplicate them and make them challenging, right?
Exactly.
So we just need a simple set of directions to go from A to B. Are you going to take a wrong turn? Is the road going to be closed? Are there going to be issues? Is something under construction? Sure. But at the end of the day, if you have like a very simple map to get anything done, like if I can't hand you directions on how we put a listing for sale and you can't figure it out and follow it, it's too hard and no one's going to do it and it's not duplicatable. If I go say, hey, you and I could go probably figure out how to work at McDonald's within probably an hour or two because they make it so simple.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's kind of the way I think about our business and how we put it together is that could I set the directions of how to do something in front of anybody and they can figure it out within an hour or two.
Definitely.
That's really how simple it should be. And that's kind of the way we set it up. In my world, we have a half dozen agents who support each other, support us. And then we have a support team that support them. What I've found when I first started, I started bringing on a couple agents and I didn't really have a strong structure in the office. And I realized I now became their assistant. And I kind of reversed that role and found like some great people to help us grow and do the things we want to do from like the office standpoint, because at the end of the day, I want to be sitting here in this podcast and stuff is still happening, right? My phone isn't the only pivotal point to people doing something.
Totally.
And I think that also takes a lot of stress off people. When I first got started and when most people in real estate first get started, you're like, I can't go on a vacation. Like, no. I can just go to Vegas for 2 days and burn out and come right back because if I go further than that, no one's going to want to do business with me. Everyone's going to leave me and I'm going to cry and die.
So it's like the idea that you have to be available 24/7 all the time.
And I find even with successful agents, that's always a stressful thing because it's like such random times. I had someone call me today. They're like, hey, can you talk in 5 minutes? I want to buy a house. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm stopping what I'm doing and talking to you about buying a house, right? So our days get turned around and shifted quite a bit. So it's like kind of maintaining that very simple, like when I set up the day, I'm very focused on, hey, can I just get 3 to 5 things done? And they might be big things, but if it's everything else I can get rid of and have people help me with it and pay those people and, make sure that they're loved and appreciated. Like I'm not a high turnover person. Most people have been with me. I'm very lucky that most people have been with me longer than I hear most of the other real estate agents keep people around.
Sure.
So I think that's really important because people, like the people we bring into our world, I find real estate people, me included, we get highly emotional when we're telling someone you just lost out on your 8th house this week or month or whatever, or, you're dealing with the highs and lows. You need someone to kind of help you by your side. So technology is awesome, but people are more awesome. That's kind of the way I look at it. And we can only get better with good people that can use technology.
Yeah.
So Obviously tech's a really popular thing. Everyone wants to talk about new technology.
It's the buzzword,
it's a
man.
buzzword.
It's a big one. Another one in real estate systems.
We all pay for a lot of stuff, and we charge it's a credit card charge, right? Like how many agents have something between $39 and $89 hitting their credit card they haven't opened up the app to in months just because we're just an easy sucker and a target. That's why we get called all day long.
Yeah.
So learning to say no, that's really important. Like I said, our office is structured. We have, kind of 3 people running the administrative side and then a half dozen agents. So we're not a huge team. We're not by any means they're much bigger teams in San Diego, which are awesome and I have a lot of respect for, and they're super cool. We do our thing and we just do it well. I feel that a lot of the service we offer is just more involved and a little, I hate using the word concierge style, but we really do a lot of things that even clients from the other side or party of a transaction will go, I never knew my agent was supposed to do all these things. And I was like, well, I don't really know if he is or isn't, but I just told you, like, we have to do this because that's what our clients want. We want to make them happy. And we probably go the extra mile, sometimes almost too far, but a lot of times, like, I'd rather invest that time in that 30, 45 days with that person to know that we created like a super awesome experience for them so that we're not having to live our days paying for leads for the rest of our life and have to survive off that. So I mean, a good experience goes a long way and people appreciate that.
Yeah, totally. And then they're going to tell the people they know, hey, man, I had this great experience with Sean's team. He went the extra mile. And so no, that makes perfect sense. And I noticed in, you mentioned specifically in some of your bio stuff online is taking an active approach with buyers. And also, you mentioned you're working with buyers and sellers today isn't how it was just a few short years ago. So, and then thirdly, that, that you utilize the most powerful tool we have, the internet. So how are you guys using, since we're talking about tech, how do you use it? How do you use it in your business? And, what have you found that's been successful and what's worked well?
I think technology, when you're an individual agent versus having a group of people around you, is different. We're on the bigger platforms like Commissions Inc. and that kind of stuff where we have a lot of insight and transparency into what people are doing, because we find that when people complain that they're in a lull or a rut or I can't get a deal or I can't get this, we usually go sit down, look at the technology you're using and go, hey, maybe you haven't logged in a while. Maybe there's a bunch of people who are looking for homes that you're not paying enough attention and showing enough love to. So it allows us better insight to help our own people, right? It's kind of like everybody I have one of those Fitbit things, right? I wear that all the time. I'm like, did I get any better from wearing the Fitbit? No, but I sure as hell knew when I was slacking. And that's where I started to pay attention. That's kind of what I think about that. It's the same thing. The fancy CRMs that we use and all this stuff is essentially like the Fitbit for our business, right? Like we want to know what's going on in real time and how we can help more people. And then essentially, like for us to get bigger and better, it's just tweaking up the people, tweaking up the accountability to what's going on there. So we're on Commissions Inc. We use pretty much every like premium program you can go buy right now. We have because if you're going to spend some money to go get it, spend the right amount of money and just get it right. And we found, when we try and half-ass a software, like let's say I want to go call a bunch of homeowners that live in the area. If you're not getting the cell phone most premium exotic version of the data, it's kind of a waste of money. Don't pay for it at all.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of our technology is just the stuff to reach out to people and the stuff to keep ourselves accountable to do that. We use a lot of the cool apps where you can do all the mortgage calculators and that kind of stuff that a lot of people have, but with actual local information. We've been doing a lot more stuff with video these days because that's obviously super important. We've found like a lot of people are into the 3D tours of homes and stuff. We do a lot of that stuff. I found personally for me, I found that most people aren't spending as much time on those, especially the older generation.
Sure.
So we started moving to some more videos where it's more of an interactive video through the house, not like all just fancy blip, blip, boom. Okay. So we got a little bit more, we changed kind of the style of video and what, in a different direction. And we've seen a lot better response from people as they watch it because like most people create the real estate video as more of a egotistical approach to appease a seller. Kind of silly, right? So we're looking at it as how can I give someone an actual insight to what it is to live in the house and experience the house and not just fancy pan picture, fancy fireplace photo,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
So like there's kind of like what I see a lot of people doing that's working is kind of giving that experience of, hey, this is what it's like to actually live here.
More human element.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
so how do you do that when you create one of those videos?
It's just more of that whole, like, I think when you walk through a property, one of the things always with those videos is they don't actually give you the experience of walking through the front door. I think that's always like really important because that's people's first impression is they want to know, is it well lit? You know, so like my idea of a video is how can we focus on the things that people are requirements to buy real estate? Like how's the lighting? What direction is it facing? How's the feel of the backyard? Is it private? Is it not? So I want to focus on it is private. It is those things. So it sounds like really simple nuances, but we found like over the last couple of videos we've done with this more of mentality, we've actually gotten a lot better response from the people we put it in front of to actually like click through and view it. And we ended up having a lot more views on those videos. So it was interesting because people will go back and watch them multiple times to feel what it's like in the property, as opposed to just some fancy, like over cinematic type video.
So do you have like a voiceover, or is it a person like, hey, I'm going to take you, like, what's this?
I know we're on a podcast, but I don't have that sexy of a voice. So if I'm going to bring in someone to do that, I will. But more of like, people don't want to hear me talk, right? That what we want to do is show off the details of the house. And we want to make it in a very like neutral way so people can experience it and not feel overly influenced, right? Mm-hmm. The whole part of sales is once we get to the house. Like that's where we want to create an experience. I'm a big ambiance experience guy when you go show a home.
Okay.
There's nothing worse than like the real estate agent pulling up to the house right as you're there. They rip their pants getting into the lockbox.
The sign under the arm.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Yeah. So like we want to create a little better experience. Obviously with the volume of people we're working with these days and like how sporadic buyer showings are, you can't always deliver that experience these days. It's a little tougher.
Right.
But like with the listing agents who have those listings, like creating an environment where like we walked into some house and like there was trash in there and stuff like that's a poor service to the person they're paying all that money to. So we're kind of big on making sure that like it's a good place people are going to and it has the best possible shot at getting what it should get for the house.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well then let's talk. I mean, what does an open house look like then for you? I mean, what kind of ambiance and experience would you deliver?
Oh, I was thinking,
do you deliver
white wine and Sade and some candles lit?
Oh, nice.
Nice
bear rug right out in front
exactly.
of the fireplace.
No, I think with experience is kind of like, obviously with COVID, like an open house is kind of different and kind of weird. It's a very interesting thing. Like we had an open house probably 2 weeks ago. We probably had in 3 days, we had like 175 people through. So there was a lot of activity in there, but it was weird because like people obviously they don't want to touch anything. Everybody's very like protective and covered up and almost intimidated to ask questions. And I found the mask is almost become when people come through the house is like a paper bag over their head so they don't talk to you.
Yeah.
So it's interesting like now today where it's hard to understand people through a mask.
It is hard. I thought I was going deaf for a while because I'd be like, what?
Well, everybody just sounds all mumbled, right? Like we're on fancy mics and we're in like a professional studio in here. Like this is legit, but you're in an open house and it's like, and it's like it's really hard to understand what people are saying. So we've gotten to using like QR codes. We've gotten to using like more of the flyers where we're detailing out a lot more stuff. And like people like taking swag now. It's kind of like when you go to like a fair or something, if there's a free thing you can take. So we just started laying out more free things. And people are like, oh, I have to have that flyer. And I'm like, my face is on it. Like you're just taking like a piece of marketing material with my face on it. And it has nothing to do with the house. But it's funny watching people. I always find like open houses are like a weird social experiment. Like people come through, they just want to start taking things. Like they want to feel like they got something for visiting you. And I'm like, I'm glad you put socks on today. Like it's nice to see you out and about. And it's just funny how people roll through an open house. It's kind of like door knocking. My joke with door knocking is you're lucky to see with more than 50% of the people wearing both a shirt and pants.
Yeah.
Like they're naked when you get home. Like, I'm like, don't you just lay around naked all day in the house? Like, I know we're working from home, but like, there's a Zoom call eventually. So you just see all these people roll through the house, and it's like they're now more into like they want to go read paper, but they don't want to talk to you because typical thing. Everybody walks into something where they're sold something and they get highly uncomfortable, right? They look down. Like people's manners totally change when you see people in open house. So this just sounds really silly, but actually talking softer, so they have to come closer to listening to you, and talking with your head up goes a long way.
Yeah.
And it's so funny, like, to watch people, like, you see agents, I roll into their house while they're showing it, and we're showing, they're just on the couch reading a book, and I was like, all right, that was a good use of 3 hours.
Right.
It's, to me, like, you should be kind of tired after you leave one of those, because you've interacted with so many people.
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea, right?
Yeah, so to me, it's more of like how you interact with the people. Like, they should want to give information and want to share that with you, not something like, I find out these agents, like, you will not be allowed in the home unless you sign away that I can spam you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, no,
like,
yeah.
I mean, we all kind of do that, but like, it's, at the end of the day, like, they know what you're doing. But like, I count the people really who beg me for my information, even though my ugly face is on the sign outside. But I want people to go, you have so much value that I want to spend more time with you. And all that takes is like a few minutes of extra research out in front of, before you go to an open house or something like that. That just, most people don't do. Knowing where things are, knowing the comps in the neighborhood, being able to share that with people. We print them all out and give people all this information. At the end of the day, like, you can kind of tell when they've been to a couple open houses, because like, you can tell all the junk in their hand, like they've been to the expo.
Right.
They're just collecting paper. Like, we want them to have more of our paper than the next guy, because that's kind of where like the local recognition of that, and where signs breed signs. Some person told me at one point of how you kind of spread the good word about, when you have a listing like that. And it's funny, like, we'll go in and do it. Obviously open houses, we haven't had much of them until the last 60 days or so.
Yeah.
So now that we're back in motion doing that, it took a little while for people to kind of get back into it. Like, we started them back in late June, July, and most of July people were pretty weird in an open house. Now they're kind of like,
coming around.
It's like they're walking into Whole Foods and they don't care anymore. Like, they're just kind of like, they're okay with it. So, it's interesting to see how people change. So that's been an interesting dynamic. I don't know what that'll look like 6 months from now, but everything's changing like every 90 days, no matter what you do. So
yeah, totally. And I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. I mean, stuff changes so rapidly now, business and marketing and, strategy and execution, all that stuff. But it's interesting. You talk about, when you're at an open house, if talking softer, like, do you use different tonality? Do you do like matching and stuff like that, or are you pretty much like, I'm just gonna talk soft and be the same guy the whole time? Because I know, like,
that's boring. No, you got to you're kind of a one of the flight directors, the when you're on a plane.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on the word right now, but flight attendant. You're kind of telling them where the exits are, how they find the thing. People want the basic information. It's the stuff we never listen to on a plane, and God forbid we ever needed.
Like how to use a seatbelt.
Yeah, exactly. So, like how to click in a seatbelt. I'm like, I thought I figured this out, and they still have to come tell me.
Right.
So we go through the basic stuff, right, to catch their attention.
Yep.
And you kind of tell from people's eyes, like if they're very skittish and they walk away, I'm like, all right, leave those people alone.
You pick up on that, right?
Yeah,
do enough of these, and
you watch people's comfort level, right? So I love watching people in like crowds like that and see what people do, because you get the people who like super interested, then you get the know-it-all neighbor. My house has this. I'm like, oh, cool. We should go sell it and look at it right now. No, I'm not ready. I'm like, okay, like, you talk a big game.
Right.
So it's funny to watch all the different people that come through this. I always have fun doing open houses, and that I haven't done as many of them lately, because a lot of our team members, they love the opportunity to meet people in a neighborhood. Of
course.
But I always go pop in and show up and talk to people and, kind of get to know them a little bit better. Because you end up finding out a lot of things about a neighborhood you don't know when you do that. Like, it's a great way to just learn.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to make it a fun experience for people to come in and get to know you as a person who's trusted in that neighborhood.
Yeah, totally. I have a good buddy of mine that I grew up with. I went to high school with him and everything. And he's in Denver now, and he's a quite successful real estate agent there.
Sure.
And he started doing this really cool thing on social media where he would post, like, he'd go to different neighborhoods that he wanted to farm, and he would post pictures of like historical properties, and he'd be like, did you know that this was the first place in Denver that did A, B, and it was just like some interesting fact that, it wasn't salesy, it was super genuine, and it was just like educating, and it was like fascinating stuff, and I was like, wow. And then I like noticed that I was like, it's really working for him. And he started, he's been doing really well for a while, but I'm curious to know, like, what you mentioned, that you're big into branding and identity and things like that. So how do you brand? Do you brand like the unique approach where like we don't want to do what everybody else is doing, or is it more like, find a model that works and put your own spin on it? How do you brand? How do you farm? How do you put yourself as the authority in different markets?
Good question. So, I think a lot of us like overhype brand. What's my brand, right? I sat down with an agent. It's just like, I want to build my brand. I was like, have you sold any houses? No. Oh, okay. That's cool. You know what your brand is? Your brand is people know you doing something well, right? Like they know that you do something well, whether it's, I would say the Chargers because they're next to the stadium, but that's a very sad story.
It's a sensitive topic.
Very sensitive topic.
Yes.
But if you think about like what's Apple's, I was explaining this to our team today. Like what is like the branding behind Apple? It's like sleek, cool. But I was like, what else is really important about it? I was like, it works. Yeah. Like my iPhone, I mean, not mine, but probably everyone else's, it like works. I can take a photo. I can make a phone call. The odds of it breaking are a lot lower than, no offense, whoever has a Samsung Note, but like, it's an Android phone. Like you ruin all the group text messages because you have that phone. Like it's just a problem.
Right.
So like,
every time somebody gets an iPhone, I always tell them, welcome to sophisticated society. Right. And I'm not knocking any Android users. I'm just saying.
I can, because I don't have one. So anyway, but if you think about it, like that's like a brand, right? Like we know that like it's cool. It's like, so when I think of it, like a lot of people in real estate, like we're so different. I was like, oh really? What do you take pictures of the home? Like, do you make a video of the home? Like a lot of us offer a very similar service, right? Yeah. Like we're a commoditized business. You go in to get a home loan, you go in, those are all, we're getting to a very commoditized. And if you don't realize that, you're kind of living in a dark hole. Like telling me that you have this unique branding proposal when you sit down to list my house. I'm like, do you really? Like you took cooler photos than the next guy did, right? But I think what people get into is that what we spend a lot of time is like when real estate, when times are good, right? You can sell your house. I'm sure you could call one of the different companies that will sell your house and make it cheap and easy and all that kind of stuff. But is it always cheap? And is it always easy, or is it give the illusion of that? There's lots of companies touting that they're the cheapest version to sell your house. I'm like, I'm sure that works for a majority of people. Yeah. Like, it's kind of like when I went to fix my iPhone, I realized I shouldn't be fixing my iPhone. I'm going to take it to the Apple store, right?
Of course.
But there are some people that'll sit on YouTube and they'll fix their iPhone and they'll make it work and stuff. And I'm just going to walk into iPhone and go, it broke, make it better, right? So like, there's different customers. I'm not looking for the guy who sits on YouTube to learn how to do it. I mean, we're going to put our videos there, but I'm looking for the person who goes, it's broke, I want you to fix it. Yes. Those are our customers.
Yep.
So like when we look at like what's unique about us, we want people who need an extra helping hand in figuring out how to make their house actually sell for the most money, getting the advice, coordinating it, because like, you have a older seller who's got a house that's, grossly undervalued because of its current condition. She's moving into a retirement home. And if she spent $15,000 could get $100,000 out of the house.
Totally.
Well, we're going to be the ones to tell them, hey, we're going to help you with this. We're going to make this right for you so you can go make that money. Is it going to take a little bit more time? Yes. But could this extend your wealth preservation for another couple of years while you want to live your beautiful years that you have? Like, that's really important to us. So like our uniqueness and our brand and that is really doing an exemplary job for someone when we know that they probably can't or don't have the resources or the time. That's really a lot more that branding means to me. Like I can make a cool logo. I can do all those kind of things. At the end of the day, like I want people to think like, I have a client of mine who I've known for years, helped him out with a lot of his friends and stuff. And he always introduces me like, this guy will not screw you. He will be honest to you and he will find you the deal. And when I was thinking about it, I was like, that's kind of our brand, right? Is that's what we try and live and die by, is that like people trust us with a lot of money, right?
Totally.
Like we're like the most cowboy reckless financial advisors that could possibly exist. Like, I mean, you can literally do whatever you want in real estate and get away with it. But if you go deal with the guy who actually deals with the money in the account, a house is just a bank account. Like you just have, I mean, for some people, but it's nothing more than just a bunch of money sitting in a place that you live, right? It's no different than our 401k accounts, but all of a sudden that guy cannot do anything, can't post a YouTube video, literally can't do anything. So we're just in this really interesting business where we have all this freedom to do whatever we want. And some of us do a good job of it and some of us don't. And, so branding really to me is how do we make something that is a good service recognizable by those those words and by that meaning. So that's my kind of philosophy on it.
Yep.
I know that might not be everybody's cup of tea because it doesn't sound as sexy, but at the end of the day, like I want people to know that this guy will get your shit done and will not screw you and will tell you when you're making a mistake, because that's the worst feeling anybody can have is I bought something and I made a mistake. Like it lives with them for a long time.
Totally.
And they blame the real estate person.
Of course.
They never blame themselves.
Of course. Yeah. Well, no. And I mean, I like how you put it. Honestly, if I was buying something that was very expensive and I put a lot of emotional labor in something, I would much rather have somebody, you know, instead of being like, oh, I've got all the tech and the systems and this and that, I would much rather have them say, look, man, I'm not going to screw you. I will always be honest and I'm going to find you the deal. I mean, that, you know, a lot of people too probably don't feel comfortable maybe asking you that stuff right away. So you have to kind of like draw out their concerns, you know, and especially in this climate, I mean, if they're even, you know, talking at all. So I'm sure that, you know, that kind of direct approach, I can appreciate that. Another thing you said that I love is the whole DIY thing. It's like, yes, you can sell your home by yourself, or you can fix your phone by yourself, but just because you can and there's a tutorial on it and there's a bunch of content about it doesn't mean everybody wants to do that, or it doesn't mean they have the resources to do that or that they're interested in doing that. So yeah, I think that's really powerful stuff. And you know, I know that being unique, I've seen so much real estate marketing, and you know, I mean, a lot of it is just really similar and kind of generic, and you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I feel like the raw, authentic route is probably not a bad way to go.
I'll tell you a quick story. We send postcards, we send mailers, that kind of stuff. And like, you know, like we send just sold and just, I'm like, that's cool. So we went on this run of sending like a little bit more edgier postcards. Put like, is your house a unicorn? Put a unicorn out on the postcard and mail this to like, I don't know, 7,000 people.
Sure.
And we got more responses from putting a big flowery unicorn and is your house the one on that. I mean, random old ladies were calling me going like, I think I have a unicorn.
Oh, that's
like,
awesome.
Can I come over?
Yeah, right.
So you know, so it's really funny. Like we started getting a little bit more, you know, coming outside of the box, you know, we're using, you know, the whole, I won't go into some of it because it's probably not appropriate. But anyway, kind of the whole Netflix and chill, and like how people, as your agent, just sitting around watching Netflix.
Yeah, yeah.
We're out working.
Yep.
You know, like I know we're in a pandemic, but homes are still selling. So we used a lot of things that were a little bit more interesting to the exact time. We were going to go down the path of Tiger King and all that fun stuff at the time. We decided not to.
Yeah, that was a crazy show.
But like you kind of get the idea of like, we have the ability to make marketing and branding so relevant to the minute, because we can literally call our branding guy, our marketing guy, say, pump this out and send it out. And within a week, we can share a message with a lot of people.
Yep.
So that's kind of a gift that we're given. Not all of us use it to the best extent, but like when we talk about branding, I'm trying to get away from always sending the same stuff that's lazy and easy, because it's kind of like when everybody sends a happy, you know, Happy Columbus Day email.
Yeah.
Or Happy Labor Day, and you had 7,000, your entire email inbox was full of like Labor Day sale. And what did you do? Delete. Oh, I'm going to unsubscribe. So like sending things that people actually care about, like I voted to never send an email ever again that said just listed or just sold in the title, because it literally says just in my spam box or just in the dumpster.
Yeah, not going to look at it.
No, because why do you look at it? I don't care. Like nobody cares. If someone says I just sold this, you know, the Empire State Building, I'm like, that's cool. Next. Like we don't care. We're our minds go like this. It moves so fast that we don't spend a lot of time over someone's big accomplishment. I mean, we're the only industry that we all share with each other how much we sold and how awesome we are and how we're the best human ever. Like, I don't know of any other industry that does that. But unfortunately, if you don't, you're kind of like falling in behind.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that, you know, that makes sense. I try to like approach the email subject too with like if somebody's got like something that's really design heavy and templated, and they're like they're in a very personal business. It's like, I always think like, well, would I send this to a friend?
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like if I was sending something to a buddy that I personally cared about, would I send him something quick and to the point that was, you know, as valuable as I thought? Or would I send him something like big and fluffy with a bunch of graphics and heavy design? And, you know, the answer is always like, no, it'd be simple, quick. Hey, you know, there's a problem. Here's a solution. Resources right there. Happy to help. Yep. You know what I mean? So yeah. And that's, you know, I don't know, the whole, whenever somebody's like, do you have a newsletter? It's like, Yeah, I mean, we can do a newsletter if you want, but everybody's got a newsletter. But you switch up the language, you switch up the heading, you can take a totally different spin. So the we should steal the unicorn thing. I kind of like that.
I'll send it to you so you can see it.
I would love to be able to see that.
It was pretty funny. I was a little embarrassed sending it out, and then it worked really well. And I was like, okay,
definitely.
People like that stuff.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, man, that's been great. So, before we end the show here, I want to talk a little bit about where you see real estate going in the next 10 to 20 years. With technology, with the big box brokerages and the Redfins and all that stuff, and big data and Amazon selling homes and all this kind of stuff. What's the role? How is the role of the agent going to change? How is the industry what's the ramifications of kind of where things are going with tech, in your opinion?
All over the place. I mean, I think we're an industry that we have an incredibly large lobby group for, and they've done a good job. But like anything else where technology can add its 2 cents and steal those dollars away from humans, it will. And I think I think for anyone to sit here today and say, we're going to continue at the same pace we're at for the next 10, 20 years, is kind of fooling themselves.
Sure.
Everybody who's in the real estate business listening to this has heard of, Zillow buying a house that they should have listed. It's going to happen. It's happening at a small scale right now. But if you think about it, a big company owns the information and they also own all the clicks. So they know where people are looking. So maybe they decide to buy all the homes they can in that square 2 mile radius and hold on to those homes. And they have a lot more control. I think that's going to be something we're just going to continually be talking about in some degree over and over. I know in the last couple decades, there's been the help you sells and all this kind of stuff, and they never quite had the traction. And they always go out of business as soon as the market goes bad.
Yep.
Because when times are bad, people really want the best warrior they can find at the cheapest price, but they still want a warrior.
Yeah, they need that guy that's going to be honest and not bullshit you and get you the deal, right?
So when you look at that and we look at technology, it's going to be a slow bleed, but I think that bleed's going to happen. So it's now's a time where people in this business should consider hey, can I invest in one of the companies I work with? Can I buy more real estate myself and have a retirement plan? One of the things that I've realized I don't want to become is that realtor in their 60s, and I'm sorry if you're listening, who's still chilling at open houses and getting their Sundays ruined and brunch canceled because they got to go show a house on the other side of town. That model is going to change through technology. And if those people don't adapt, I think we are going to see a big shift in who's still around. If you're at that age where you don't really care and you only got 10 years left, sure, go for it. Send it. You're going to ride that thing into the sunset. But I think what we're going to see are people who are probably going to be around for the next 10, 20 years is, I think, high volume in units is going to be a big proponent to people's long-standing success. I think the luxury markets, people still want to trust a person to do that.
Totally.
Because what I've found is that people in the high end, there's all this technology around, and I haven't seen Zillow buy one of those houses. So I think you're pretty well insulated in the high end, but I think always there's this panache that everybody wants to be a luxury broker in their Instagram handle and investor and all these things. But at the end of the day, I think if you continue to work hard and you continue to put in effort, most of these people are going to be okay. But it's probably investing more. We have so much more ability to research how we can invest better. That I don't think most people, we didn't have 10 years ago, really. We had the internet, but there was, now you can listen to some guy on YouTube University who has done it, seen it, and he's sharing it with you.
Getting a lot more granular with
Exactly.
everything.
So you can learn a lot more by yourself and almost DIY it and partner with people and do things that are more creative. I don't think the business will at all be the same 10 years from now. I don't think 20 is going to be. I think we're talking 10. I think we're talking a much different business that large corporations who buy homes at a slight loss is probably what we end up seeing in the market is going to be a huge portion of the business, because think about it. It's kind of freaking easy. Sit there. You'll pay me that much for my house. I could get more money, but I'm lazy and I want to move and I want to move.
Exactly.
Click. So I think real estate people are going to have to start offering options like that. I think, the next big thing is we're all going to have the home buyer programs ourselves. I'll buy your house. Daddy bank of whatever is going to be the one funding it. I'll buy it and I'll resell it under some program. I think that's coming. And there's a lot of people, I see some people are starting to use it, but I think a lot of people are going to turn into wholesalers. If you think about it, like I buy your paper and I'm reselling your paper before it goes to the market and I sell it my way. And it's not going to be through open houses and that kind of stuff. So I think we're going to see a different era of real estate. I don't think, if you think about it, like we've just added a lot to technology, but really hasn't taken away much of the business over the last 10 years. But I think this next 10 is where we start to see the big companies chipping away. There's just too much money to be made for them to not go into that space. And I think they're long overdue, but we just have such a big lobbying group that keeps us whole. But eventually, like any other big lobbying group, like someone's going to find a way to get their way in.
Totally. Love that. Well, everybody listening and watching, rewind the past 5 minutes and listen to that immense value that my guy Sean just added there. Sean, I loved everything that you said. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Where can we connect with you? What's the easiest way to get a hold of you? Social handles, wherever you like to, be reached out to. Let everybody know how they can connect with you.
You can pretty much at Sean Zanganeh me, and I know that's a tough one. SeanZanganeh on most of your popular platforms. You can reach out to us on mysddreamhome.com. Sean at mysddreamhome.com. My phone number is 858-229-6063. So if you want to slide into the DMs, send me a text. I'm happy to help you guys out. Thank you so much for having me today. This is an awesome studio. I'm really impressed with what you guys have done with this, and it's an honor to be here.
Yeah, man, really, really appreciate that. And everybody, if you like this episode, go check out our other content. You can hit us on IG or FB at the What's Next Pod. We've got all of our episodes on YouTube and the what'snextpod.com as well. And, like, follow, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. Sean, thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me.
Tony, do you have any parting words for our guest of honor or our audience before we close it out?
Thank you for coming, and thank you for the valuable information that you just provide. It's very helpful.
Brother.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, then we're going to head out of here. Tony, take us out.
We sit down with real estate agents and talk about how the industry is changing, thriving with technology. We look at strategy. We love it. Welcome to What's Next.